Hi, Paul Arnold here, sometimes known as Stuttering Professor, and today I want to talk to you about creativity. Look, I've spent the past 30 years working in the advertising industry, so I want to share with you some of the principles and the things I've learned in that field. And why this is becoming increasingly important is because when we look into the future, a lot of work is suggesting that creativity is the third most important factor we're going to need for future managing. Why? Because problems are getting more and more complex, and that linear logical process of thinking, of trying to devise the solution, is no longer going to be able to resolve the complexity of the issues we're going to face. So every single one of us has got to increase our creativity. And there are sort of three top line things I just want to say about creativity. First of all, it's the mindset. Look, if you believe you're good at something, you're more likely to go and have a go at it. And do you know what? We're all born creative, and we all have this ability to just think in weird and wonderful ways because no one's put any constraints upon us at that point in time. But you know what? Society and our environment slowly close us down and squash us into these small little boxes. And we've got to let go of that stuff and realize that we're all born creative and we all naturally are creative. So just rediscover it. The second thing is, you know what? It's a process. You know, what most creatives do is they're just using a number of sort of unconscious processes to actually help work out new ways of seeing things and doing things. And I'm going to introduce you to quite a few of those a bit later on. And the third thing is like a muscle. You know, if you don't work a muscle, it gets very flabby. If you keep working it, you keep working your creative muscle, you know what? It becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and that's what you've got to go and do. Now, there are three guiding principles which actually underpin all of these sort of various 14 techniques I'm going to share with you in a short while. So the first one is about breaking through old patterns of thinking. The second one is about crashing through different ideas together, and the third one is acceptance of failure. So let's just look at the first one, breaking through old patterns of thinking. Look, the way of seeing something almost blocks us from seeing it in another way. So actually we've got to learn how to sort of junk the way we see things and have the capacity to start seeing things quite differently. You know, and that's why often, you know, great creativity comes from people working in pairs, because one person sees it one way, one person sees it the other way, and you get that challengingness that goes on. Brian Uzi wrote about, you know, what defines success of Broadway shows, and one of the things he found is that if you're about 70% of people who've worked in the production team together, that really helps to actually make things work really. But you need to have about 30% who are outside of it, who brings new ideas in. So you need to have that challengingness about that stuff. And certainly, you know, Matthew Syre's book about rebel ideas actually goes a lot about talking about we need diversity of thinking to help us solve the complex problems we're now having to face in society. And Steve Jobs, when he was at Pixar, you know, he did this wonderful thing. He took out all the latrines in the whole building and put one central block, because he knew that he wanted to create a place that everyone would come together, because he knew you've got to just randomly bump into people, have the chance to have a weird conversations with people, and only by doing that do you get this sort of interesting perspectives all coming on. And one of the things we've got to do, we've got to challenge convention. We've got to keep asking why, and really be sort of almost deliberately difficult, because we've got to learn to break the rules, because we've got to challenge those paradigms that no one is doing. So you've got to keep thinking, well, why do we do? Why do we do? Why? And so what we just do. And as soon as someone said, we just do, aha, that's a good place to start breaking. So take Kit Kat, for example. You know, a wonderful brand full of rituals and things like that. But once you start saying, well, why does it have been thin sticks? Can you then open the brand up to new possibilities? One of the other things that Steve Jobs did at Pixar was he sort of, you know, he started to run these sessions of what we call constructive challenging meetings, where every minute of film that was produced, they get a team together who would challenge it And it wasn't done in a negative way, it's done in a positive way, because a lot of work's been shown that brainstorming, all this idea about, oh, we should never sort of knock anyone's ideas out, doesn't actually work. You've got to be held up and challenged to it, and then someone then has another point of view, and that's the way that we need to break through old thinking, and only way by breakthrough and chucking away old thinking can we then allow new ideas to come in. So that's number one, breaking through our patterns of thinking. Number two is crashing together of different ideas. And it sort of like follows on from there. And this is the idea that if you can't do that, you just bring things together randomly, you smash them together randomly on the idea that potentially out of that you may get something. And the third thing, and maybe the most important, is acceptance of failure. Look, fear is this bigger thing that holds us back. And the trouble is that, if you actually fear failure, it stops you from creativity. Look, creativity has at its very heart of it failure. If you look at what goes inside most advertising agencies, the creators will come up with maybe, 20, 30, 40, 100 different ideas, of which only one will ever see the light of day. So in other words, failure is baked into the way that advertising agencies work. And I think actually the trouble is that actually, that environments can stifle creativity. And if you work at an accountancy firm, which is very much about logical deductive processes, there's no room for any error or risk, it's very difficult to allow someone to be creative in that environment versus in a creative agency. It's just part of the course. Actually, we celebrate failure. So in many ways, we've got to allow a space that we are allowed to fail, even in organizations that may be quite strong in other fields where you've got to be absolutely right. So now I want to share with you 14 different techniques. So let's just quickly try to rattle these off. The first thing is ask better questions. If you see something from a different perspective rather than start, it opens up new solutions. And one of the rules we know from synectics is asking a question in a how-to. If you ask how-to, it automatically fires the brain to think of solutions. So try to actually say, the issue behind this is this, and actually how to get the solution. Therefore, it opens up new ways of creative thinking. The second one is get distracted. James Webb Young wrote a fantastic, very small book, it's still out there, about how you go and do creativity. And he says, first of all, you surround yourself with lots of information, then you leave it. And you go off and you do something. It's a bit like sort of putting the basic raw ingredients of the cake in the oven and just allowing it to rise by itself. And sure enough, when you're out there doing something else, you allow the unconscious. Because the reality is our unconscious brain is much more capable of creativity than our conscious brain. Our conscious brain is very small and can't deal with it. So put it into the unconscious brain, let it do its magical work. Then we have new rules. This idea that we are caught by unconscious rules of a category. And one of the ways I often do is I take the rules of another category and I smashed it into our category. So in other words, if I'm looking at toothpaste, I'm going to take the rules of, say, shampoo and look at it like that. It starts to open up our mind thinking about that space. Then we go like beg, borrow, steal. You know what? There is very few completely new solutions, but however, someone solved it elsewhere. You look outside your category, you look abroad. You look in a completely weird one of those. Who else has got a similar sort of problem that we've got, and resolve it there? So I know that, when the printer ink was having problems, they solved it by looking at the way which a biro worked. So I was find solutions outside. Then we talk about new eyes. How could you see it from a different angle? How would a 6-year-old see it? How would a yachtsman see it? How would an astronaut see it? How would a dog see it? And by looking at it from different eyes, you deliberately force yourself to stop looking at the way you're looking at it and look at it in another way. Another way of new eyes is imagine if your company was taken over by someone new. So the classic thing, if Steve Jobs owned this company, or if Richard Branson owned this company, or whoever it happens to be, I don't care. It could be a creative person. It could be Leonardo da Vinci. It could be Salvador Dali. It doesn't matter. But you think of someone else, think, how would they approach it? And actually you bring their modus operandi into what they do it like that. Therefore that helps you to see it in a different way. Metaphor is quite a nice one. You say, what is this problem? What's it like? It's a bit like that. And then what you then do is say, if it's a bit like that, you say, well, how would we solve the problem if it was like that? And you stay in metaphor. You solve the problem in the metaphor rather than in your kind of thing, because we're so clouded and locked in our way of thinking when we're thinking about here. When you go to metaphor, it's quite easy how to solve it. Then we talk about a tree of laterality. This is like just drawing endless association connection. I say, like, draw a spider with 8 different legs, write your key issue in the middle, then write 8 things about it. Then each one of those 8 ones, you do another 3, and each one of those other 3, you do another 2. So in other words, you've got 8 times 3 times by 2. Suddenly, you've got a whole wealth of different sort of ways of looking at this. And out of that, there's something really weird that's taking you all the way over there, that now you can look and think, actually, that's an interesting point to do that. So it forces you to move away further out from the problem. And if you still haven't solved that, you do another level. Then projective techniques. This idea about we draw a picture of what this organising or what the problem looks like. Get a bit of plasticine, get some Lego out, make a shape, create a song. All those things actually tap into other areas of creativity that we can bring to that. And then once we've done it, we can then look at it afresh and say, what's that really saying to us about that? These may sound crazy and what, but that's the point. Let go of that adult, rational sort of thinking and go childlike and allow your childness to come through and allow yourself to fail. You know, it's just play. Then new senses. Sometimes, you know, I've done things when actually I put blindfolds on, or I said, you know, how would this taste? What would that feel like? I said, well, what do you mean? You know, because actually the more we can change the way we look at that, the better. Then random associations, smashing things together, taking 2 random things out of a book or something like that and say, you know, why are these 2 things similar? And then change it. How do you make it bigger? How do you make it smaller? How do you make it faster? How do you make it with something different? Do it like that. Meditation. Take yourself in some guided meditation to think of it slightly differently in a different weird space really can help. And the last one, explore new horizons. Be open to new sources. Go traveling, pick up different magazines. All of those are ways to increase your creativity. So I hope that helps. You know, obviously I run workshops all about this, and if you want any more information, then please see the contact links at the end of this video. Anyway, enjoy your creative hunting. Ciao for now.